And welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Listen, NASCAR made some history by bringing all three national series to the Naval Base Coronado for one of the most unique race weekends we've ever seen. We'll break down the winners, the surprises, and the post-race confrontation between Noah Gragson and former Formula One driver, Kevin Magnussen, that everyone's talking about right now. Then we'll head to Road America, where Christian Lundgaard pulled off one of the most impressive comeback victories of the IndyCar season, and where the future stars of the sport battled through dramatic INDY NXT doubleheader that included a post-race disqualification that changed the outcome. We'll also recap a massive week in the world of Outlaws Sprint Car Series, where hundreds of thousands of dollars were on the line at the Houston Speedway. Some of the biggest names in dirt racing chased some record-setting paydays. Plus, we'll discuss Formula One's planned 2027 power unit changes and what that could mean for the future of the sport. And to close the show, we're going to take a trip back to racing history and profile one of the greatest drivers to never win a Formula One World Championship, a man who raced for Brabham, Ferrari, Lotus, and Williams, won 12 Grand Prix, nearly captured the 1981 title, and later became one of the most influential politicians in Argentina. This is the remarkable story of Carlos Lole Reutemann. All that and more coming up right now on Historic Hot Laps. All right, one of the most anticipated events of the 2026 NASCAR season is officially in the books, and I have to say, NASCAR absolutely hit a home run on this one. No doubt about it. For the first time ever, NASCAR's top three National Series raced on an active military installation, taking over Naval Base Coronado in San Diego, California. The weekend celebrated the 250th anniversary of both the United States and the United States Navy, while bringing stock car racing to one of the most unique venues the sport has ever seen. The 3.4-mile street circuit wound its way back around aircraft carriers, naval facilities, and active military infrastructure, creating a backdrop unlike anything we've ever seen in NASCAR. The result? Chaos. Walls everywhere, drivers pushing beyond the limit, surprises, upsets, and some heated post-race conversations. Let's break it all down from an unforgettable weekend in San Diego. Starting with the Craftsman Truck Series, they had the honor of being the first NASCAR race ever held at the Naval Base Coronado, and frankly, they gave us exactly what a brand new street course should deliver, and that's complete mayhem. Throughout practice and qualifying, drivers struggled to adapt to the narrow confines of an unforgiving concrete barrier. Turns 15 and 16 became notorious trouble spots, and several trucks left practice with significant damage. And by several, I mean half of the field. Caden Honeycutt earned the inaugural pole position, but once the green flag dropped, it was Lane Riggs who quickly established himself as the class of the field. Riggs controlled much of the race, winning the battle of survival while managing fuel strategy and numerous restarts. One of the coolest moments of the race came from seven-time Cup Series champion Jimmie Johnson. Driving in the Truck Series event, Johnson actually found himself leading laps for the first time in any NASCAR National Series event since 2020, drawing huge cheers from the Southern California crowd. He is a California native and such. But the biggest storyline came late. A red flag set up a sprint to the finish, and suddenly several front runners were eliminated from contention. Tyler Reif briefly looked poised to pull off one of the biggest upsets of the season before a mistake in the final corners opened the door, and Lane Riggs capitalized. Riggs crossed the finish line first and claimed one of the most memorable victories of his young career. Behind him, you had Daniel Hemrick and Kaz Grala. What's crazy, though, is Hemrick quietly drove from 32nd on the grid all the way to second place. One of the drives of the weekend. Grala also delivered a fantastic road course performance to compete in that podium. Considering the circumstances, the walls, the strategy calls, and the pressure of the brand new venue, Lane Riggs may have put together one of the most impressive Truck Series wins we've seen all season. Then Saturday belonged to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and if Friday wasn't enough chaos, Saturday was all the drama. Veteran Austin Hill entered the weekend still searching for his first career road course victory. By the end of the afternoon, he had finally checked that box off. The race featured multiple lead changes and strategy battles as teams tried to figure out tire wear, braking zones, and a demanding Coronado circuit. Taylor Gray looked like a serious contender throughout the afternoon. Carson Kvapil was strong. Sheldon Creed stayed in the fight. But when it mattered most, Austin Hill delivered. Coming into the final lap, Hill made a decisive move that completed a thrilling pass to secure his first road course victory and another huge win for Richard Childress Racing. Behind him, you had Taylor Gray in second, Sheldon Creed in third. For Hill, this wasn't just another win. This was a statement victory. We've often talked about Austin Hill being one of the most complete drivers in the series on super speedways and intermediate tracks, but road courses have always been the question mark, and questions have been answered. Winning one of the most technical circuits NASCAR has introduced in years, that gives Hill another layer of credibility as a championship threat. Now let's talk about the Sunday, the big boys of racing here. Sunday's Cup race had enormous expectations. Talking a new venue, massive crowd, Prime Video exclusive broadcast. We know they do a great job over there, so shout out to them. I know their 5 race run or whatever's over, but Great job by everyone at Prime. You had the military celebration, aircraft carriers sitting beside the racetrack, and somehow the race still exceeded all the expectations. The weekend began with many experts pointing towards Shane van Gisbergen, as we know, the road course ace. He started from the pole and looked like an obvious favorite entering the event, as he always is on road courses, but Coronado had other ideas. We saw crashes, strategy shakeups, tire issues, drivers bouncing off all the barriers, everything you would expect from a first-time street circuit. Then came the upset. Corey Heim, making just his 13th Cup start, found himself battling fellow 2311 racing driver Tyler Reddick in the closing laps. Instead of backing down, Heim went on the attack. He passed Reddick, survived the pressure, and drove away to score his first NASCAR Cup Series victory. Let that sink in for just a second. Corey Heim's first Cup win in only his 13th start on a brand new track, one of the most difficult tracks NASCAR has raced in years, against some of the best road racers in the sport. And that's a career-defining moment. I mean, the upset for Corey taking everything away is just wild. And then you had Bubba Wallace following him up in second. I mean, the 2311 cars were absolutely insane. The bigger picture here is what this means for Heim's future. We've been talking for years about Corey Heim being one of the brightest prospects in the Toyota pipeline. I mean, Truck Series, he decimated all, right? Now he owns a Cup Series trophy, and he earned it. It wasn't given to him. He absolutely earned it. So congrats to him. Congrats to the team. He's got a big future ahead of him. It's going to be exciting to watch. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest post-race storylines of this whole event. After the race, Noah Gragson and former Formula One driver Kevin Magnussen had a heated exchange that quickly made its way around social media. The disagreement stemmed from contact during the race, and Gragson was clearly unhappy with how Magnussen raced him throughout the afternoon. Magnussen, meanwhile, didn't exactly back down. If you followed Kevin Magnussen throughout Formula One, IMSA, or sports cars, this reality shouldn't surprise anyone. The Danish driver has built an entire career around aggressive racing. He's never been afraid to use every inch of the racetrack available. And that mentality has followed him into NASCAR. The interesting part is what it says about NASCAR's growing international influence. 10 years ago, a former Formula One driver and NASCAR veteran probably aren't having this conversation on pit road after a race held at a military base in Southern California. Today, this is just another Sunday. Personally, I don't think this is something that escalates beyond Coronado. It looks like these two competitors frustrated with each other after a difficult race. Everyone's wore out. Honestly, a little emotion after a race isn't necessarily a bad thing. For one thing, it made for great social media headlines, but when the checkered flag fell on Sunday, the biggest winner may not have been Corey Heim, Austin Hill, or Lane Riggs. It may have been NASCAR itself. The Coronado experiment worked. The setting looked incredible, the racing was unpredictable, and the fans, they showed up. And every series delivered memorable moments. If this was a test run for NASCAR's future at the Naval Base, I'd say mission accomplished. Now the question becomes whether we do it again. All right, now let's talk some open wheel. From the streets of San Diego, we're going to head to one of the most beloved road courses in North America, and that's Road America. 4 miles of fast sweeping corners, massive braking zones, long straightaways, and enough racing history to fill an entire season of this show. This year's Road America weekend delivered everything fans could ask for. You had championship battles, rising stars, post-race controversy, and one of the most remarkable IndyCar victories we've seen all season. Let's kick it off with the doubleheader for Indy NXT. Let's start there. The future stars of IndyCar. The Indy NXT Championship arrived at Road America for one of the most important weekends of the season. Not only was it a doubleheader, but the championship standings entered the weekend. They were incredibly tight. That meant drivers had 2 opportunities to score points and potentially change their entire championship picture. Saturday's opening race belonged to Lockie Hughes. The Andretti Global driver continued what had been a tremendous rookie campaign by taking victory in race 1 at Road America. Hughes showed excellent pace throughout the event and added another major win to Andretti's already impressive season. Behind Hughes, the championship battle remained incredibly close. He had Nikita Johnson coming up in second and Matteo Nannini in third. Nikita Johnson continued his consistent championship challenge with another podium finish, while Matteo Nannini quietly put together one of the strongest weekends of the season. And as you'll hear in a moment, Nannini wasn't finished making headlines. Sunday's second race looked straightforward at first. Alessandro De Tullio crossed the finish line first after another strong performance from AJ Foyt Racing, but then came one of the biggest stories of the entire weekend. Post-race technical inspection revealed tire-related violations involving both AJ Foyt Racing entries. The result was both cars were disqualified. That completely reshuffled the finishing order and handed Matteo his first Indy NXT victory in more than 3 years. Those kinds of penalties are rare, especially after a race win, and they can have a major championship implication. Your official results after that for race 2 were Matteo first, Nikita Johnson in second, and Josh Pearson in third. For Nannini, it was an unexpected but well-earned victory. For Johnson, it was another huge points day. For the championship battle, Road America may end up being remembered as the turning point of the season. Biggest takeaway from the weekend is the depth of talent we currently have in Indy NXT. We continue to see names like Hughes, Johnson, Nannini, Pearson, Fittipaldi, Taylor, all capable of winning on any given weekend, and that's exactly what IndyCar wants from its development ladder. The next generation is coming, and they look incredibly strong. Now let's move on to Sunday's main event, the Expel Grand Prix at Road America. Coming into the weekend, most of the conversation centered around Alex Palou, and why not? Palou entered Road America on an incredible run and extended his qualifying dominance by securing his 5th consecutive pole position. Many people believed Road America would become another chapter in Alex Palou's domination story for the season, but Christian Lundgaard had other plans. What happened Sunday was one of the drives of the year. Christian Lundgaard didn't just win, he came from the back of the field. At one point, the race looked completely lost. He suffered damage early, strategy came critical, and several cautions really shook up the order, but Arrow McLaren made the right calls. I believe at one point he was 2 laps down, but Lundgaard stayed within striking distance the whole time, and when the opportunity arrived, he capitalized on it. Lap after lap, he worked his way through the field. Then suddenly, in the closing stages, he found himself battling for the victory. When the checkered flag flew, Christian Lundgaard had gone from last to first. That's not supposed to happen in modern IndyCar, yet somehow it did. As if the comeback story wasn't enough, though, the final laps featured one of the wildest podium battles of the season. David Malukas put together one of the strongest performances of the year. Will Power fought aggressively for position, and contact during the closing laps created plenty of discussion throughout the paddock afterward and online. It was a classic Road America racing incident. You had hard racing, limited mistakes, and drivers pushing every inch of the circuit. Your top 3, we talked about Christian Lundgaard capitalizing in first place, David Malukas coming up second, and Will Power in third. Just missing the podium was Kiffin Simpson in fourth and Alex Palou in fifth. And even though Palou didn't win, another strong finish to help him continue to build an already impressive championship campaign. And definitely, if we had to pick a driver of the weekend award for Road America, it's Christian Lundgaard. Coming from the back of the field to win at one of the fastest, most technical road courses on the schedule is remarkable. There are race wins, there are dominant race wins, and then there are races people remember years later, and this one's going to fall into that category, right? Road America once again reminded us why it's a crown jewel of American motorsports. The Indy NXT Championship tightened up, the IndyCar battle remains fascinating, and Christian Lundgaard delivered one of the most defining performances of the 2026 season. If NASCAR gave us chaos at Coronado, IndyCar gave us a masterclass in strategy, execution, and perseverance at Road America, and that's why this is one of the best motorsports weekends we've seen up to this point in the seasons, this year alone. But before we jump into the next segment, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode of Historic Hot Laps, make sure you're following and subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast. We've now surpassed 90 episodes covering the biggest stories of motorsports from NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, sprint cars, endurance racing, and all the incredible history that helped shape the sports that we love today. Following the show is one of the easiest ways to support what we do here, and it ensures you never miss a future episode or guest interview. You can always help us grow by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform and sharing the show for a fellow racing fan. We truly appreciate every listener who joins us each week. Now let's get back in the action. We still got plenty of motorsports to cover here at Historic Hot Laps. Okay, while NASCAR was making history in San Diego and IndyCar was putting on a show at Road America, sprint car racing's biggest stars were chasing some of the largest paydays that the sport has ever seen. The World of Outlaws, NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series, spent the week at Huset's Speedway in Brandon, South Dakota for a hefty seed of Huset's Hustle and BillionAuto.com High Bank Nationals. And when I say big money, I mean big money for sprint car. Over 4 nights, nearly $1 million in total purse money was available, including a staggering $150,000 to win Huset's Hustle and a record-setting $300,000 to win High Bank National Finale. The week began with a $20,000 to win preliminary feature, and once again, it was Buddy Kofoid showing why he's become one of the hottest drivers in sprint racing. Kofoid picked up the preliminary night victory, continuing an incredible run of success at Huset's Speedway, setting the tone for what would become a massive week. Thursday, main event, $150,000 on the line. The pressure couldn't have been any higher, but Buddy Kofoid never blinked. Leading all 40 laps, Kofoid dominated the Huset's Hustle finale and collected one of the biggest paydays in sprint car racing. It was his 5th World of Outlaws victory at Huset's Speedway. and further cemented his reputation as one of the premier talents in dirt racing today. Friday night belonged to Sheldon Haudenschild. After several near misses in major events over the last few seasons, Haudenschild finally broke through during a preliminary night at the High Bank Nationals. A late race battle highlighted the evening, and Haudenschild emerged victorious to earn the $20,000 preliminary payday while building momentum heading into Saturday's historic finale. And then we arrived Saturday at the main event, $300,000 to win, the richest race in World of Outlaws sprint car history, the biggest payday ever offered at Houston Speedway, and when the dust settled, David Gravel was standing in victory lane. No surprise, Gravel led the distance and put together a flawless performance under immense pressure. The victory delivered a record-setting $300,000 payday and added another major trophy to an already impressive championship-caliber season. Simple takeaways from the weekend. David Gravel may not have won the biggest race. But Buddy Kofoid may have been the fastest driver. Kofoid walked away with 2 victories and $170,000 in earnings during the week. Gravel, as we mentioned, captured the headline-grabbing $300,000 finale. Sheldon Haudenschild reminded everyone why he's still one of the most dangerous drivers in sprint car racing when everything comes together for him. For sprint car fans, this is one of the marquee events of the entire season, and Houston Speedway once again proves why it's become one of the crown jewels of dirt track racing. When the World of Outlaws roll into town with 6-figure paydays on the line, the best drivers in the world show up to put on a show, and that's exactly what happened in South Dakota. All right, let's talk just a little bit of news real quick. F1 and the FIA have officially agreed to change the new power unit formula beginning in 2027. And the short version is this: the cars will be less electric and more engine powered. So what's different from 2026? Well, remember, the current 2026 era rules were built around a roughly 50-50 split between the V6 engine and the hybrid system. Drivers and teams complained that the cars required too much energy management and sometimes felt unnatural to race. So for 2027, Formula One is shifting the balance back towards a combustion engine. Now, these aren't huge swings of power, so keep that in mind. But internal combustion engine power increase, electric motor deployment decrease. Currently, you're about 53% engine and 47% electric. They were looking more for 50-50 as the year went on, but the current update sits at 53 to 47. In 2027, you're going to go 58% engine, 42% electric. And then by 2028, you're going to be 60% engine and 40% electric. The easiest way to think about this is more V6 power, less battery dependence, more flat-out driving, less lifting and coasting to recharge energy, especially in the braking zones. So why is F1 doing this? Well, drivers, including several of the top stars of the sport, have been pretty vocal that the heavily electric focused setup created too much energy management and could lead to awkward speed differences on the track. I mean, we saw a bunch of that already this year. The FIA says the goal is to make the cars more intuitive, safer, and more exciting to race. While still keeping the hybrid technology and sustainable fuels that are central to F1's future, the V6 turbo hybrid engine stays. It's just getting a bigger share of the power. Fuel flow will also increase, which will help combustion engine power and everything else. So bottom line, if you're watching Formula One in 2027, expect cars to sound and drive a little more like the traditional hybrids and less like the battery management exercises we've seen so far this season. More engine, less electric, and hopefully more flat-out racing, right? That's all we can hope for. Let's shift gears over, though, talk about something that hit the waves today as we record this. One of the biggest IndyCar silly season stories of 2026, and this one is no longer speculation. Meyer Shank Racing has officially confirmed that Indianapolis 500 winner Felix Rosenqvist will leave the organization at the conclusion of this season. The news broke this week after Rosenqvist informed team ownership he intends to accept an offer from a rival IndyCar team for 2027. That means one of the hottest drivers on the market right now and one of the most sought-after seats in the paddock are officially both in play. When Felix Rosenqvist joined Meyer Shank Racing, the team was looking to establish itself as a consistent contender. Fast forward to today, and the partnership has helped elevate both the driver and the organization itself. This season alone, Rosenqvist delivered the biggest victory in team history by winning the 110th Indy 500. He currently sits 6th in the championship standings, has one of the most consistent performers this season. In many ways, this has been a career renaissance for Felix. After showing tremendous promise as a rookie with Chip Ganassi Racing in 2019, his years at Arrow McLaren never quite produced the results many expected. But since arriving at Meyer Shank, we've seen Felix Rosenqvist become the driver that many believed he was capable of becoming as a championship contender. Meyer Shank Racing co-owner Mike Shank didn't hide his disappointment in this. Shank acknowledged that It's unfortunate to lose a driver who played such a significant role in building the team into what it is today, but he also made it clear that the organization remains focused on finishing the season strong and preparing for the future. And here's an important detail. According to reports, Meyer Shank Racing made a substantial counteroffer to keep Rosenqvist. In other words, this wasn't a situation where the team wanted to move on. They wanted him back. Felix simply chose a different opportunity. Now comes the fun part. The destination for Felix has not been officially announced, but the rumor mill is already in full swing. The two names most frequently connected to Rosenqvist are Andretti Global and Arrow McLaren. And honestly, both of them make a lot of sense. And it also makes sense when you talk about the pocketbook side of things. If I had to rank the possibility today, Andretti Global would be my favorite for him. Andretti is always looking for proven race winners. They've shown a willingness to bring experienced veterans into the organization, and Rosenqvist checks every single box. He has Formula E success. He has IndyCar victories. He's now an Indy 500 champion. Perhaps most importantly, he brings an experience that could help strengthen an already competitive lineup over there. The biggest question would be the roster space and how Andretti plans to structure its future driver lineup. Obviously, the only real seat that would be open there would be Marcus Ericsson, if that does happen. But there's another good driver where's he going to end up, right? I mean, it just spirals from here. The other option, second possibility, is perhaps more fascinating, and that's a return to Arrow McLaren. At first glance, it seems pretty unlikely. After all, Felix already spent several seasons there, right? Racing has a funny way of bringing people back together. The current Arrow McLaren organization is very different from the one that Rosenqvist left. The team is much stronger, the resources are much greater, and Felix himself is a much different driver today. He's more experienced, more confident, and now carries credibility that comes along with being an Indy 500 champion. Arrow McLaren believes he can develop and then lift the organization. Don't be surprised if this is where he ends up. I mean, we know he's already got a deal, we just don't know who it's with. Of course, there's always a dark horse option too, and that's Chip Ganassi Racing. Could they become involved if a seat unexpectedly opens? Could another organization maybe make a late push? I don't think at this point. It's probably already locked up. But right now, Andretti Global and Arrow McLaren appear to be the names generating most discussion online. Here's the other side of the story. While Felix's future is grabbing headlines, Meyer Shank Racing suddenly has one of the most attractive openings in IndyCar. With the technical alliance from Chip Ganassi Racing and the recent performance gains we've seen from the organization, the number 60 Honda immediately becomes one of the most desirable rides on the market. And according to reports, there's already significant interest from both current IndyCar drivers and racers outside the series. That means the driver market could start moving very quickly. When Felix Rosenqvist arrived at Meyer Shank Racing, many wondered if his best IndyCar years were behind him. I think it's safe to say we now know the answer. Not only has he revived his career, he's increased his value to the point where rival teams are willing to make some major offers just to bring him aboard. And honestly, that's a testament to both Felix and Meyer Shank Racing. They helped each other grow. They won an Indy 500 together. And regardless of where Felix lands, his partnership will be remembered as one of the most successful chapters of both of their careers. Now the question becomes, is he heading to Andretti? Is a reunion with Arrow McLaren on the horizon? Or is there a surprise waiting in the wing? One thing is certain, the IndyCar silly season just got a whole lot more interesting. Throughout the history of Formula One, there have been great champions. You had Fangio, Stewart, Lauda, Prost, Senna. But there's another group of drivers who are remembered just as fondly, the drivers who never won a championship. And among that group, few names generate more discussion than Carlos Reutemann. Today on Historic Hot Laps, we're going to take a deep dive into the life and career of one of Argentina's greatest racing heroes, a Formula One star, rally driver, a governor, a senator, and perhaps one of the greatest drivers never to wear the crown of world champion. This is the story of Carlos Reutemann. Carlos Reutemann was born April 12, 1942 in Santa Fe, Argentina. His family were farmers and ranchers, far removed from the glamour of Formula One. In fact, Reutemann later joked that as a boy he often rode horseback to school. He came from a mix of Swiss German, Argentine, and Italian heritage, and unlike many modern racing stars, he didn't begin racing as a child. Most Formula One racing drivers are racing karts before they reach their teenage years. Carlos didn't begin racing until he was 23 years old. That fact alone makes his rise to Formula One remarkable. He quickly progressed through Argentine touring cars and Formula 2 competition, before receiving support from the Automobile Club of Argentina to race in Europe, and that's when the motorsport world really started to pay attention. Before we go any further, let's explain the nickname of Lole. Throughout Argentina, almost nobody called him Carlos. He was simply Lole. And contrary to popular belief, the nickname didn't mean wolf or warrior. It actually originated from a childhood mispronunciation involving piglets. Only in motorsports can a future Formula One legend spend his entire career racing under a nickname that essentially began as a childhood accident. Let's talk about his Formula One debut. In 1972, Reutemann made his Formula One debut with Brabham. Now imagine this. You're making your first Formula One start. You've never raced at this level before. You're driving a car that isn't considered a favorite. What do? Apparently, if you're Carlos Reutemann, you put it on pole position. In front of his home crowd at the Argentine Grand Prix, Reutemann stunned the Formula One world by taking pole in his very first World Championship race. Even today, that's one of the rarest achievements in Formula One history. The race itself didn't go perfectly, but the star had announced his arrival. The next few seasons established Reutemann as one of the fastest drivers in the world. He drove for Brabham during one of the most competitive periods in Formula One had ever seen. In 1974, he finally earned his first Grand Prix victory at the South African Grand Prix. And once that first one arrived, many more followed. By the time his Formula One career ended, Reutemann had accumulated 146 Grand Prix starts, 12 victories, 45 podium positions, 6 pole positions, and 4 top 3 championship finishes. At the time he retired, those 45 podiums became the most ever recorded by a driver who had never won a world championship. One reason Reutemann's career is so fascinating is the teams that he drove for. Brabham, Ferrari, Lotus, Williams. That's basically a Formula One Hall of Fame tour. He wasn't just driving for good teams, he was driving some seriously iconic organizations in motorsport history, and no matter where he went, he won races. He finished third in the championship with Brabham, third again with Ferrari, and third once more for Williams. Very few drivers have demonstrated elite speed across multiple teams the way Reutemann did. Then we arrive at the season that still haunts Formula One historians, and that's 1981, the year Carlos Reutemann should have become world champion. Driving for Williams, Reutemann opened the season in incredible form. He finished second in Argentina, he won in Brazil, he won in Belgium, collected podium after podium, and by mid-season he held a commanding championship lead. But there was a problem. His teammate was defending world champion Alan Jones, and the relationship between the two drivers became increasingly strained. The most famous moment came at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Williams displayed a team order reading Jones' route. In other words, Jones first, Reutemann second. Reutemann ignored it. He won the race, and while it was one of the greatest victories of his career, it created tension that would linger throughout the season. By the final race in Las Vegas, Reutemann still had a shot at the championship. He entered the race leading Nelson Piquet, but everything unraveled. He struggled throughout the event and finished 8th. Piquet finished 5th, and the championship slipped away by a single point. 1 point. After 11 seasons, 146 races, and years of chasing greatness, Carlos Reutemann missed becoming a world champion by the narrowest of margins. What's crazy is this isn't the first time we've talked about this with other drivers. This is something that just happens in motorsports, right? One word follows Carlos Reutemann throughout nearly every historical account of his career, and that's enigmatic. Engineers loved his technical understanding, fellow drivers respected his speed, but many struggled to understand him. On some weekends, he looked unbeatable. On others, he appeared almost withdrawn. Several team members later suggested that confidence and atmosphere played a huge role in his performance. When he felt comfortable and supported, he could beat anyone. On his best days, he absolutely did. And on his worst days, they were his worst days. Here's a fun fact many Formula One fans don't know, and that's Reutemann wasn't just quick in Grand Prix racing, he was also quick in rallying. In 1980, Fiat entered him in the Rally Argentina, and he finished third. 5 years later, Peugeot gave him another opportunity, and he finished third again. So Carlos Reutemann became one of the very few drivers in history to stand on the podium in both Formula One and World Rally Championship. When his racing career ended, though, Reutemann did something almost nobody expected, and he entered politics. Unlike many athletes who briefly dabble in public office, Reutemann became genuinely influential. He served 2 terms as governor of Santa Fe. He became a national senator. At several points, many Argentinians believed he had the popularity to run for president, yet he repeatedly declined the opportunity. For nearly 3 decades after racing, Carlos Reutemann remained a major figure in Argentine public life. Perhaps my favorite story comes years after his retirement. When Formula One returned to Argentina in 1995, organizers invited Reutemann to drive a Ferrari demonstration car. He was 53 years old. He hadn't raced Formula One in over a decade. The track was wet. The Ferrari used paddle shifters he had never had experience with during his career, and yet witnesses said he drove the car like he'd never left. The crowd erupted in chants of Lole, and it was one final reminder of what made him special. Carlos Reutemann passed away on July 7th, 2021 at the age of 79, but his legacy remains secure. He's still the last Argentine driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix. He remains one of the most successful drivers to never win a world championship. And for many fans, he belongs on the short list of the greatest drivers to ever capture the title. Some careers are defined by championships, others are defined by excellence. Carlos Reutemann's career was defined by excellence. As a farm kid from Santa Fe who rose to the pinnacle of motorsport, won races for Formula One's greatest teams, nearly conquered the world, and spent decades serving his country, that's why Carlos Lole Reutemann remains one of the most fascinating figures in racing history. This has been another Historic Hot Lap Driver Profile. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on any of the socials as well. We're on everything. Until next week, stay safe. Appreciate the listen. Thanks for tuning in.